Do you feel like we hit a tipping point? I guess, do you think, well, two questions in one, I guess. Do you think we passed a tipping point with the election of Donald Trump? And do you think we've passed peak woke?
The tipping point of Trump getting reelected was a breath of fresh air. I think people now feel like they can speak freely given the convincingness of his win, and that's going to percolate throughout academia. As far as whether or not we've escaped peak woke, I'm hesitant to make any sort of decisive claims on that, but I think certainly it's still a huge problem. It's still going to be one that they're going to try to make a problem, the left will. It's important to be vigilant against it, but I think that with some of the insanity that we saw leading up to the election, Biden's dementia being covered up, now we see how DEI has just basically led to immense suffering, or certainly been an influential factor in the absolutely disgraceful response to the fires in California, the fires in Hawaii. DEI is just, it's totally disgraced and been a sore spot and acid and corrosive to everything it touches. And so people are seeing that now. So I would say probably, yeah, we've passed a tipping point for peak woke, but it's still a very big problem and still one that we're going to have to continue to eliminate. We've passed peak woke, but woke is still very peak, if that makes sense.
Well, it feels to me like a large majority of Americans have kind of realized, like, we don't have to put up with this anymore. We're not on board with this. I don't have to tell you my pronouns. I'm not okay with castrating mentally ill kids in the name of human rights. Like, most Americans are past that, but the true believers are in positions of great power with, university faculty and administrators, people running nonprofits, HR departments. All of those people are just kind of have a death grip on these institutions of power. And these are the most mentally unhinged people. That seems like where the final battle is going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be taking back the institutions, or like I said, creating parallel ones. I think we're seeing a little bit of that change now with some of the changes that have been made at, some of the subtle changes that have been made at some of the Ivy Leagues. Certainly the post-Hamas 10-7 stuff led to certainly some changes that were probably good. But it's really going to be decided upon whether or not you want to try to salvage an institution that's captured or just create parallel ones. But certainly in the case of the gender insanity, it's gonna be a legal issue too. It's gonna be suing. It's gonna be criminal prosecutions of people that have misled young, vulnerable adolescents. So it's going to be a multi-pronged approach to either creating parallel institutions and sort of cleansing the culture of this insanity, this madness.
How do you evaluate this in historical terms? I don't know what to compare it to. I mean, there's little segments of it. I know Michael Schellenberger compared a lot of the gender medicine to lobotomies, but how do you view wokeness in big historical terms? How will history view this moment and this movement?
Well, I even discussed a little bit of that when I was on the public podcast back just over a year ago, I believe now. And I think you have to go back to some of the stuff in Germany and Europe during the sort of, interlude between World War I, World War II. But as far as how this particular period of time will be characterized, it's going to be difficult to say because social media wasn't around back then. Even though you had ways of amplifying messages, social media has just completely taken the lid off communication in a way that has been unprecedented even when you had television. I mean, it's just insane now where people can get their information. So I think historically looking back, where we place the current situation and current phenomenon in the last, say, 2016 to 2024 is going to be determined about what we get going forward. I mean, do we get back to a period of grounding or do we lose and does things just go off the rails even further? Hopefully that's changed, but you just don't know how we're going to be able to relatively situate this period of woke insanity. Is it a prelude? Or is it a sort of an end to something?
What do you see as the best case and worst case scenarios in terms of outcome?
I mean, I think the best case is that the woke insanity dies down. We get back to biological grounding in our research and in our understanding of human behavior. And the worst outcome is simply the opposite of that, where everything is a social construction and we live in a world of complete social constructivism, where there is no tether to biological reality or evolutionarily grounded thinking. And when you have that, you end up with just a complete limitless culture that will eventually, lead to civil